So, very pleased to welcome now to the PHAP booth here at the World Humanitarian Summit, Martin Barber, who has been serving as Senior Advisor to OCHA on the World Humanitarian Summit. Warm welcome, Martin. Thank you for joining us. So, let's see, it's been a long anticipated event. What are your impressions now? We're running almost to the end. It's been a very busy 2 days. Has everything gone as you expected? Have there been any surprises for you over the last couple of days here in Istanbul?
I think it will be difficult to answer that question until a few days after the event, because nobody can cover everything that's happened. There have been so many things going on at once that each individual participant has only gathered a small snapshot of the things that have happened. So with that caveat, I have found it quite interesting, and I think potentially rather important, that the move to change the language with which we discuss some of these issues seems to be getting through. And I've been encouraged that the way that the Secretary General's report asked us to think about the relationship between communities affected by humanitarian disasters and the people who are trying to provide support, that this relationship is being talked about in a somewhat new way.
Yes.
And this was encapsulated in all the various sessions that were around people at the centre for localised activity and support for local initiatives. And I think this is very encouraging. But it will need very strong follow-up and monitoring to make sure that those whose business models don't fit the new idea are pushed to change their business model and not just imagine that they can carry on as before.
Yeah, no, it won't necessarily come easily, I think. What do you think we might be able to look forward to? Some have described the summit as not an endpoint but a starting point, and I think many people, as you say, see different issues that, of course, they'll be following up. But what are a few that you see have very concrete next steps that we can already anticipate watching coming out of the summit?
Well, I think that the debate up to the drafting of the Secretary General's report and the launching of the Secretary General's report, there was quite a big internal debate about whether the Secretary General should address the question of the architecture of the humanitarian system. And in the end, as of course everyone now knows, it was decided not to do that. My initial reaction was, whoops, I was a bit... But then I became completely convinced that this was the right decision.
Okay.
And I think there are three reasons why this is the right decision. First, there is no consensus about how the architecture should be changed. This consensus has simply not emerged. So we are not at a Sustainable Development Goal moment in relation to the architecture. We just don't know how to do it. And if the Secretary General had put forward proposals, they would have completely swamped the discussion of everything else.
Yes.
And the fact that he didn't put forward proposals has forced everybody to look at the local, at the point at which the whole thing starts, which is where people become affected by humanitarian crisis. So, what I would be looking for would not be anything at the global level. I'd be looking entirely in the countries affected by humanitarian emergencies to see whether the humanitarian country teams have changed the way they work, whether local partners are part of the joint assessment of needs, whether coordination meetings are taking place in local languages and not only in English. I think there are a whole series of ideas and commitments that have come out of the process leading up to the summit and of the summit itself, which need to be put into practice in the individual countries and communities which are affected by crises. Once we see how that works, once we see what that implies in terms of changes at the regional level and at the global level, then it will be time to look at the architecture.
Yes, makes sense. A last question, you mentioned the commitments. Can we expect to see some kind of formal monitoring of the commitments, or is that still an open question?
No, I think there has to be, personally, this is a personal view, I think there has to be a formal monitoring of the commitments. And hopefully, when we see what all the commitments are, then the OCHA and the others and the Secretary General will have time to consider how these commitments should be monitored. And I don't know, maybe there's a courageous academic institution out there somewhere which might volunteer to do it. Why not? I've just come from a meeting where the business community launched its great new initiative. Where are the initiatives from the university? I didn't hear many initiatives or commitments from universities. But maybe there should be a forum of universities working on humanitarian issues that could come up with a response that would monitor the commitments of the summit, for example.
It would be very interesting to see. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us, and congratulations on what's been, I think, a very interesting experience and very valuable on multiple levels. So thank you for your contribution to it.
I think it's been fascinating to listen to and watch it happen. And I think that we must keep our attention on the process over the next year or two to see what really comes out of it.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Martin.
Thanks very much.